Hello everybody, I hope you're all well. If you're confused, yes, I have decided to re-upload this video. There were a few bits of information that I felt like I glossed over, and when I have the platform that I have, I do owe it to you guys to correct myself when I do get things wrong and gloss over things. I am going to make the corrections later in this video, but I do apologize to anyone that thought I was being too haphazard with my information, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of this video. Hello everybody, I hope you're all well. I'd say for the last 3 years or so, there has been this sense of impending doom, almost as if a ticking time bomb has been ticking away until thin is back in. And why is this? Well, it's sort of become common knowledge that trends sort of come around every 20 years or so. Think thin eyebrows, juicy couture tracksuits, mum jeans, Reebok trainers. They always come back, right? And a lot of us know that the ideal body type of the 2010s was known as the BBL body, which is basically large breasts, small waist with a flat stomach, and a big butt. And something in the 2010s, which I think caught a lot of people's attention, was when you watched old media, like old TV shows, old movies, and seeing women, specifically white women, be self-conscious about their butt being too big.
That's where you're going, fat ass.
Hey, Red, move your fat ass.
And in 2010s, that was just, no one could believe it. It was absolutely unheard of. Like, I was breaking my back as a 15-year-old doing the 30-day squat challenge in my bedroom, and you're telling me that just 20 years ago, women were self-conscious about their butt being too big? As we enter the early 2020s, a lot of people suspect, especially with the rise of almost body-focused fashion trends like micro miniskirts, low-rise, smoking becoming popular again. We'll talk more about that. Niche internet aesthetics, which seem to praise thinness a lot, like the 90s supermodel aesthetic, coquette. Will these rising trends reverse or possibly diminish all of the work of the body positivity movement in the 2010s? And was the slim, thick body type body positive at all? Or was it just yet another unrealistic beauty standard projected onto women to make them feel insecure and spend money? We are going to be talking a lot about body trends in this video and 90s thinness, but I do also want to talk a little bit about 2010's revival because I do think it has a place in this conversation, and specifically I want to talk about pale grunge Tumblr and whether different niche aesthetics making revivals or gaining popularity, whether that makes an impact on current body trends. I have also made a podcast episode about 2010's revival and pale grunge Tumblr. It's a little bit more of a sit down, candid, a bit more of a fun chat about it, to be honest. So if you want to listen to anything further on this topic, I will leave it linked down below. But before we get into 2010's revival and pale grunge Tumblr, I actually think it's really important to talk about 2010's body trends and the ideal body type of the 2010s and the history that came with that. You know, I actually think there's a lot more history there than first appears on the surface. As I mentioned earlier, the ideal body type of the 90s and the early 2000s was to be extremely skinny, up and down. And in the 2010s, it's almost as if something snapped and the ideal body type went from being extremely skinny up and down to the hourglass figure. I honestly think this body ideal was born from the Instagram model / Instagram baddie, but let's not get it twisted here. This was yet another example of white women specifically being praised for having features which women of color and specifically black women had and had been mocked for years. And this happened with the slim, thick body type. I actually read a really interesting article on The Establishment. It's by Natasha Mwanza and it's titled "The Tragic Story of Sarah Baartman and the Enduring Objectification objectification of black women. To directly quote Natasha's article, which I will leave linked down below, Sarah Baartman, also known as Saatchi or Hottentot Venus, was born in the late 18th century in the Eastern Cape, part of modern-day South Africa. She was brought to the UK with a ship surgeon who profited from exhibiting Sarah for the entertainment of the British public because of her steatophagia. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. This meant that she had excess fatty tissue around her hip and bottom area, spectacular enough to warrant her, well, a spectacle. She subsequently spent most of her adult life being exhibited at a caged freak show attraction, both in London and Paris, where she died and was displayed even in death up until the late 70s. I use Sarah Baartman as an example, not because I was trying to imply that all black women look like Sarah Baartman, but rather to display how absurd it was that her dead body was displayed up until the late 70s for white people to oogle at and mock, and just 40 years later, the BBL was popularized. Yes, Sarah Baartman was dehumanized based on her medical condition, but her race also played a big part in why she was dehumanized. I talk about the racist roots of fat phobia later in this video and how fat phobia has roots in the transatlantic slave trade. I spoke about it in my Biggest Loser videos if you want to know more. I also really recommend reading the book Fearing the Black Body by Sabrina Strings if you want to know more about this topic. I do also think my point still stands with white women being able to co-opt black women's features and get far more praise for it. We saw it with fuller lips and we absolutely see it with bigger butts. Just 15 years before the BBL was popularized, Beyonce was body shamed by mainstream media after releasing her song Bootylicious. But I didn't mean to imply that all black women are naturally curvy and have big butts. I definitely should have been more concise with my language, especially when black women are also risking their lives to get BBLs and are also struggling to meet these really rigid beauty standards. I just think with my slightly clumsy language, I may have implied that black women aren't victims to these beauty standards and these dangerous surgeries, because they absolutely are, and I am really sorry if it came across that way. Sarah Baartman's dead body was put on display until the late 70s, and just 40 years later, white women were being praised for co-opting these features. A lot of white women don't have to deal with the sexualization, objectification, adultification that comes with growing up with these features like black women do. White women get to dip their toes in, reap all of the benefits of looking racially ambiguous, and then get it all removed, reversed, dissolved when the trends change. And I do think Instagram almost created the perfect storm for the hourglass body to rise out of. Instagram, which I believe was founded in 2011, 2012, was one of the first ever solely picture sharing social media apps. Way back when I first had Instagram, when I was like 13 years old, you could only post pictures with a caption. There were no videos, there were no reels, there were no stories, and Instagram didn't have that many competitors. So not only were a lot of young adults and teenagers using the app, but also influencers on there and creators. And by the way, this is before the word influencer even entered the cultural lexicon, but people were growing at a really fast rate on there because so many people were using it, and it had really good discovery tools at the time too. So the most popular Instagram influencers of the early 2010s were Instagram models, travel influencers, like, you know, like the blue ass water, hot girls, you know, they always had that drone. Guys, the drone shots in 2014, like they were everywhere. And fitness influencers. And all of these influencers would very often post pictures of their body. If you're an Instagram model, you may post a picture in lingerie. If you were a travel influencer, you probably posted pictures in a bikini in front of a lovely sandy beach with blue ass water. And if you're a fitness influencer, you're probably wearing really tight gym clothing showing off your hourglass body. So all of a sudden it felt like hourglass big butt bodies were absolutely everywhere. And I think, at least from my memory, I think that fitness culture played such a big part in the hourglass body. Having an hourglass body became synonymous with being healthy. And because this body became so desirable and because it became the beauty standard in the 2010s, a lot of young women and girls would do anything and listen to anyone to have a body like this. And most importantly, they would buy anything if it meant that they could have that also desirable Instagram influencer hourglass body. And in the 2010s, let me tell you guys, especially the early 2010s, Instagram was the absolute wild west, because this was before any sort of advertising regulations were put on Instagram. So you could completely legally promote products and be paid to promote products, but not actually say that you were being paid to promote them. Does that make sense? Basically, you could do undisclosed sponsorships and it was completely legal. Yes, I am talking about the flat tummy tees. Oh my gosh, guys, if you survived the flat tummy tees, please let me know. I'm so lucky that my mum did not let me buy flat tummy tees. Basically, if you weren't around in the early 2010s, these flat tummy tees were often promoted by influencers, again, undisclosed, that they were being paid. And basically these flat tummy tees, they were promoted by the Jenners, the Kardashians, loads of influencers, and they were teas with laxatives in. They were natural laxatives, but they were still laxatives. And this was also before a lot of people even knew what a BBL was. And it was when people were very trusting of celebrities and influencers on Instagram. So people would take this information at surface value and would buy the flat tummy teas with laxatives in because they thought it would give them an ass like Khloe Kardashian, not realizing that not only does Khloe Kardashian is rich and has all the time in the world to go to the gym and probably has a personal chef, but also she got plastic surgery. She has a BBL. And fitness influencers would also sell their diet plans and their workout plans. And I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with fitness influencers selling diet plans and workout plans. I think the lack of transparency and selling your followers a dream is when the problems come into it. A lot of fitness influencers still now are not very transparent with how much genetics plays a part in how your body looks. And look, I don't have any fitness qualifications. I'm not an expert in this, but I do think selling your followers diet and workout plans off the basis of you're going to have a body like mine and your entire social media presence is surrounded by how your body looks, I do think that is quite irresponsible. And I just don't think it's a very good way to go about it. That's just my opinion though. You guys would be surprised, but I honestly think that more often than not, your body does not reflect how healthy you are. I don't think you can judge people's health based on how their body looks, especially because we have such warped and twisted perceptions of what a healthy body looks like due to rampant fat phobia in society. I've spoken about fat phobia a lot on this channel. I've spoken about it in my Biggest Loser videos. I spoke about it in my Pinterest aesthetics videos, which I will all leave those linked down below because I go way more into depth with it. But in those videos, I cover how BMI is actually such a terrible metric to measure health in individuals and people. A lot of people are deemed overweight and obese and are actually living perfectly healthy lifestyles. And being labeled as overweight or obese often impacts your access to medical care. If you have a medical problem which is unrelated to being overweight or obese, a lot of doctors will not give you the medical care that you need. They will tell you to just lose weight. And also, BMI metrics disproportionately impact Black people, especially Black women. I really recommend listening to the podcast Maintenance Phase if you want to know more about fat phobia. But the idea that being plus size means that definitively you are unhealthy just isn't true. You cannot gauge how healthy someone is or how healthy their lifestyle is based on how their body looks. This might be a little bit of a controversial example, but you know those guys that like get ripped at the gym and they go to the gym every single day and they eat nothing but baked chicken and vegetables and they are absolutely like hench wedge. We have been taught in society that those men are like the pinnacle of health health. But I don't really think there's anything that healthy about living a lifestyle like that. I actually think that it borders on having an eating disorder, but I feel like that's just a conversation for a different day. Also, another example which I think illustrates this point a little bit better is vegan influencers of the 2010s. Again, the Wild West. Veganism in the 2010s was actually the pits. If you don't know this, I used to be a vegan. I was a vegan for 3 years between 2017 to 2020. I don't regret it at all. I don't think there's anything bad about being vegan. I would love to go back one day, but it was just, it was being a detriment to my health, which is a shame. Anyways, in the 2010s, there were so many vegan influencers and YouTubers who were giving downright terrible nutrition and dietary advice.
So the reason that I'm going to be eating all bananas today is because we have all these ripe bananas.
And were promoting disordered eating and malnourishment, to put it very lightly. Not all of them. I think there was just sort of like a handful that were, but they were the handful that were at the top. Like they had a lot of followers and subscribers. Again, this isn't all vegan influencers at all. It was just a handful from my memory. But a lot of these popular vegan influencers and YouTubers would promote having completely raw diets of just fruit and vegetables, no carbs, no protein. Sorry, I'm just thinking about it. There were also influencers who just believed in eating a diet of solely fruit. Just fruit. And they would preach to their audiences of hundreds of thousands of people, specifically young women, that they felt great. And a lot of the time, again, their body would almost be like a center of their content. And they'd be like, look at me, guys. I look great. I feel great. And I've eaten nothing but fruit for the past 2 years. Tiffany Ferg actually made a great video about the Why I Quit Being Vegan videos and the problems that came with that. And a lot of these vegans who eventually quit veganism, basically, to cut a very long story short, were having these very raw diets of just fruit and vegetables. For years, they were preaching these diets, saying how great they felt, and then a couple years down the line would be like, I quit. I actually felt like shit the entire time. And they would never take down the old videos, and they were giving all this really bad dietary advice, saying they felt great when they actually felt terrible. I will leave the video link down below. It's a really good video. But yeah, a lot of these vegan influencers and YouTubers would say, everyone should be eating like this. I look great. I feel great. And if we're being honest with ourselves, I think the reason why so many people took their advice was because their bodies were slim and toned, and their bodies would so often be the front and center of their content. And I think that's why a lot of people took their advice, because they assumed that they were healthy, even though they've been eating nothing but fruit for 2 years. What I'm trying to say is that because a majority of people back in the early 2010s very much took Instagram at face value, a lot of young women and girls bought these flat tummy teas, bought these diet and workout plans without factoring how much genetics and even plastic surgery played a part in how these influencers and celebrities' bodies looked. And obviously, as we know, the BBL became more common knowledge in the late 2010s. And I have a lot of mixed feelings about the BBL. Obviously, I don't judge women for going and getting a BBL. I know people personally that have gone and gotten a BBL. I'm of the belief that women should be free to go and do what they want, and how women individually deal with beauty standards is up to them. You know, I have gotten filler before, I have gotten Botox before, I will probably continue to get beauty treatments in the future. So it would make me one massive hypocrite to go and judge women who go and get BBLs done. I don't think that we should judge women for dealing with the extremely rigid beauty standards of today. We all assimilate to beauty standards in one way or another. Obviously, it breaks my heart whenever I see women getting plastic surgery. You know, it makes me sad when I go and get my own treatments done. I would never judge women for dealing with the rigid beauty standards of today, how they see fit. But I do judge women who try and sell diet and fitness products off the back of their surgically altered body. But as much as I don't judge women for going and getting plastic surgeries, beauty treatments to better fit into the beauty standards, because I do it. But also, I don't think these things exist in a vacuum. Women don't just wake up one day and think, oh, you know what, I'm going to get one of the most dangerous plastic surgeries in the world just because I like the way a big bum looks. A July 2017 report by the Aesthetic Surgery Education and Research Foundation in Aesthetic Surgery Journal noted that 1 to 2 out of 6,000 BBLs resulted in death, the highest mortality rate of any plastic surgery. And just to put that mortality rate into context, it's estimated that 1 in 72,000 breast augmentations end in mortality. So you are, I think it's 12 times more likely to die of a BBL than you are to die of a breast augmentation. And the reason why BBLs have such a high mortality rate is because there is a risk of, not only is it a really new surgery, but there is a risk of accidentally injecting fat into a vein in your butt and causing like a blood clot. I have recommended this book on this channel before, but Get Rich or Die Trying by Simeon Brown is such an incredible book. And Simeon has written a really interesting chapter about plastic surgery and specifically BBLs and how it all relates to the influencer economy. I believe it's the second chapter of the book, Simeon tells the story of a surgery clinic called REUPLOAD, which is based in Istanbul, and they would specifically target young, usually naive, aspiring Instagram macro influencers and offer them plastic surgeries at a heavily discounted price in exchange for promotion. One of the women that Simeon interviewed, Charisse, wanted a BBL because she thought it would further her Instagram influencing career, but left with nearly fatal results. To read an excerpt from Simeon's book, this is from page 26. The day of Charisse's consultation in Istanbul was the same day she was operated on. This turnaround would be unthinkable in the US or the UK for a planned surgery. Her procedure was also botched. Breast implants were used as bum implants and were subsequently rejected by her body. And that was not all. The surgery lasted 9 hours and her blood levels dropped to dangerously low levels. Afterwards, she bled heavily, but she was discharged after only 4 days. When she returned to the UK, her health deteriorated so rapidly that she was hospitalized, and she was told the actions of the clinic in Istanbul had led to her developing necrosis. Her breast was rotting due to a severe infection from an untreated blood clot. When I made contact with the company to hear their side of the story, the spokesman was haughty and aggressive. They accused Charisse of being desperate for attention. A notable lack of concern shone through their reply, which was strewn with spelling errors. Charisse just wants money, they said, as if I had not seen with my own eyes the pus pouring from her breast. I spoke to another woman in her 40s who corroborated the company's disdain for the women paying them. She herself was diagnosed with broken ribs after a suspected emergency CPR during her surgery in Istanbul. Her NHS doctor concluded that she had most likely died and been resuscitated on the operating table. If so, it was an event that REUPLOAD failed to tell her about afterwards. And this excerpt only scratches the surface of these clinics who hire freelance surgeons who target young and naive aspiring Instagram macro influencers who will do anything to be more desirable and make it as an Instagram influencer. And something which really changed the way that I look at plastic surgery is finding out that a majority of plastic surgeons are men. In the US, 85% of board certified plastic surgeons are men, and a 2019 statistic states that in the US, 91% of plastic surgery patients are women, meaning that men are reaping the profits from women's insecurities. But yeah, I really, really recommend this book. Simeon's a really good storyteller, and it's just a great book. So good. And this topic of plastic surgery segues us into an interesting question of why are women's body types trends? And why does it bounce from sort of hourglass to skinny seemingly every 20 years or so? And these body trends just aren't the same with men. And I'm not saying that men don't experience fat phobia and body shaming, they absolutely do. But I just feel like women's bodies are held to this really high scrutiny and analysis and like, is it trendy? Is it not? Which I just don't think men's body types are. I mean, it's all just a bit absurd, isn't it? I think we all know this by now, but the reason why women's body types are trends is because of capitalism. Boo! People want to continuously sell you stuff and for the rest of your life make you feel like you're not good enough. What are we going to do when everyone assimilates to the hourglass body trend? No one's going to buy anything to have an hourglass body anymore. Zoop! Time to switch it up, time to get everyone to pay to get everything dissolved and reversed and to buy even more products to have the next trendy body type. So after the 2010s, you have spent tens of thousands of pounds and dollars on diet plans, on workout plans, even on a BBL, and then snap, the trends change and now you have to spend even more tens of thousands of pounds and dollars on different diet plans and different workout plans and have to get the BBL reversed. Yeah, capitalism. I hate it. Now I want to talk about pale grunge Tumblr revival and whether this plays a part in upcoming body trends. If you don't know what pale grunge / soft grunge Tumblr is, the aesthetics wiki page defines pale grunge Tumblr as an aesthetic based on simple photos with a colour palette primarily consisting of white, grey, black, green and blue. And the aesthetics wiki defines soft grunge as an aesthetic that takes the edgier, more rough side of grunge and other hardcore aesthetics and combines them with the softer, more romantic and feminine aspects of styles such as pastel goth and pale grunge. It's also influenced by the heroin chic style of the 1990s and grunge. As you can probably tell, pale grunge and soft grunge have a lot of overlap, but I am just going to be referring to the aesthetic as pale grunge from now on for the sake of convenience. But to define this aesthetic a little bit more, let's talk about the makeup, the fashion, and of course the posts. The makeup at the time, and by the way, just want to say I lived through this. I was a pale grunge Tumblr girly. I might send some pictures to Kath to post here so you guys can see how deep in this I was. The trendy makeup at the time was sort of a mix of full glam mixed with like looking a little bit dead and like vampy. So lots of cool tones, cool toned contour, no blusher, a little bit of highlighter, very bushy brows, maybe some winged eyeliner, and either a cool toned nude lip or a vampy dark red lip. Think Rimmel Kate Moss 107. I went through 3 tubes of Mac Diva in the space of a year. Like, it was serious. And the fashion, honestly, this makes me so nostalgic, but very monotone and usually all black outfits or black and white outfits. The American Apparel tennis skirt. The uniform that all the girlies had. I still own mine because I refuse to throw it away. Shall I go and get it? I'll go and get it. Guys, this is an authentic American Apparel black tennis skirt from 2014, I think I got this. Oh my God. I'm actually tempted to get this taken like cropped so it's not high-waisted because this is cute. Every day I thank God that I kept this. I don't want to alter it though because it feels like this is a historic relic. Like, they need to put this in museums. Stunning. I don't even think it fits me anymore. Fishnets, especially fishnets with Doc Martens. That was my go-to. Also that grid print. Do you guys remember the grid print? Tops with black and white stripes. Also really big platform boots were so trendy at the time. It was of the aftermath of the Jeffrey Campbell Lita. Do you remember Jeffrey Campbell Lita boots? The American flag ones? Sorry, I'm already getting too nostalgic in this video. Black skinny jeans with like just one rip at the knee. Denim jackets and also knee-high socks. Knee socks, Arctic Monkeys. Yeah. And now for the posts. Let me tell you guys, Lana Del Rey ruled 2014 Pale Grunge Tumblr. Arctic Monkeys AM, Effie Stoneham, and Effie Stoneham, Cassie, any sort of angsty skins post. A lot of just depressing and angsty posts. A lot of posts had like a very dark color palette or like a very, you know, like an evening blue kind of color palette. Smoking. Yeah. I used to post pictures of myself smoking. Yeah. And you'd like just hold the cigarette up by like your fishnet with your Doc Marten in the picture with like your bruised leg. Just me? No? Okay. Also just bruised legs. It was like aesthetic. Who remembers the phrase RIP to my youth? I remember the post which said RIP to my youth was printed on a lighter. I wanted that lighter. Elizabeth Bishop, Charlie Barker and Joanna Kutcher. Do I need to say more? Halsey.
Where are you?
The 1975. And honestly, just a ton of depressing and angsty quotes and pictures. And although I sit here and like I have a little giggle about it because I'm getting a little bit nostalgic, let me tell you guys, it was dark. Like, it was dark. I spoke about this on my podcast episode about 2010's revival, but when I was 16, I suffered quite badly with depression. Don't know why I sung that, sorry. It's because it's making me uncomfortable talking about my mental health. And I would just spend hours and hours reblogging all of these depressing and angsty posts. I would also be reblogging posts which glamorized mental illness. I would romanticize my own mental illness even though I was miserable. And because I was surrounding myself with all of this depressing content, it only further fed into my mental illness, and I had absolutely no desire to get better. And something which I've definitely noticed now that I'm older is how a lot of physical symptoms of mental illness were a part of the pale grunge aesthetic. Hear me out. It was like a core part of the aesthetic. Like, for example, being really, really thin because you weren't eating enough, bruising really easily, having really dark under eyes, smoking. I'm not saying that smoking is a symptom of mental illness, but I was smoking because I was depressed. All of these things could be turned into multiple pale grunge aesthetic posts and to be reblogged by thousands of other people, thousands of other teenagers who desired to be this way. I just remember there was this emphasis on being thin and being unwell. I honestly think this was absolutely a romanticization of mental illness. There was other ways that mental illness was romanticized on Tumblr, but I think this was just one of the ways. You could turn your physical symptoms of mental illness into an aesthetically pleasing picture. Like, what about that isn't romanticizing your mental illness? Now, the question on everyone's mind. I don't really think it's on everyone's mind. I think I just need to get off TikTok. Now, is pale grunge Tumblr coming back? Upon first appearance, you'd think no. You aren't seeing that many people going around in their American Apparel tennis skirt wearing a normal people scare me t-shirt. But I think something which is worth bearing in mind is that trends don't come back in the way that you expect them to come back. They never come back exactly the same. Trends do come back, but not in the way that we expect it. I don't think we're going to see pale grunge Tumblr come back in the form of fishnets and Rimmel Kate Moss 107 lipstick, but I do think that we're seeing pale grunge Tumblr come back in the form of lace, cool toned makeup, Paloma wool, Gabriette being the it girl of the moment, buckle fat removal. A lot of these things are 90s revival, but it is important to note that 2014 pale grunge Tumblr was 90s revival. And by the way, the aesthetic wasn't all bad. By the way, just want to make that clear. Even though I used it to feed into my own mental illness, I know that wasn't everyone's experience. I don't want to tar the 2014 pale grunge Tumblr with the same brush, you know? Like, I do have a lot of positive memories attached to it too. I do think it was a form of self-expression for a lot of people. What I'm trying to say is that I don't think it was all bad, but I do think there were a lot of bad aspects to it. So the last thing I want to talk about are the current aesthetics which are rising in popularity. Do they reflect body trends which are going to be coming up? And is thin back in? I've spoken about fat phobia many times on my channel before. As I said earlier, I will leave those videos linked down below. In my Biggest Loser video specifically, I talk a lot about how fat phobia has roots in racism and the transatlantic slave trade. I recommend reading the book Fearing the Black Body by Sabrina Strings if you want to know more about it. But whilst I was researching for this video, I found out another interesting thing about fat phobia is that the word calorie did not enter everyday language until the 1920s during the First World War. During the First World War, eating more than your assigned calories and eating more than your rations was seen as you jeopardizing the war effort. So not only did calories, the term calories, went from being used by solely medical professionals to being used by everyday Americans, but also eating more than your recommended calories was seen as jeopardizing the war effort. All of a sudden, controlling your calories became patriotic. It became patriotism. I do think thin is back in to an extent, especially with the rise of buccal fat removal and using Ozempic as a weight loss drug. But I also don't think thin ever went away. The 2010 slim thick body was still a slim body, and even though it definitely was a subversion of body norms and there definitely was some positivity and some positive impact that came from the slim thick body type being accepted, a part of me can definitely acknowledge the positive impact that the slim thick body type had on body positivity. But also the slim thick body type was still an unrealistic beauty standard pushed onto women. Of course, I think it's great that women who used to be shamed for having asses that were too big are now being embraced for it, but also women are only embraced again to a certain extent. If it gets too big, then you're shamed again. Maybe this is naive, but I don't think that 90s thinness is gonna come back in like the same way as it was in the 90s. I don't think we're gonna have celebrities going around and saying nothing tastes as good as skinny feels, because it's just not socially acceptable to say that kind of thing anymore. But also I do think it's naive of me to say that we aren't going to praise thinness the same way that we praised thinness in the 90s, because if we're being honest with ourselves, we've never stopped praising thinness. 90s thinness is going to come back because thinness never really went away. The messaging has just become a lot more subtle, and I think a big reason why we're talking about 90s thinness now is because of the ultra rich and wealthy going to such extremes to be thin, like buccal fat removal, like using Ozempic as a weight loss drug. And also I think we need to think about the public reaction to this information. There was absolute outcry. People were completely shocked and appalled by this. There is definitely more of an outcry now over this, of people going to such extreme lengths to be skinny, than there was 30 years ago. So that's a sign that we're at least going in the right direction. But perhaps the messaging is just a lot more subtle, because fat phobia has never really gone away. It's just a different slim body type became socially acceptable. I think something which really highlights society's intolerance to bodies which aren't slim is the recent treatment of Georgia Smith. She's in her mid-20s and her body has changed since she was a teenager. And the way people have reacted to her body changing is absolutely disgusting. The way men feel so entitled to women's bodies, the way men believe that women exist solely for their sexual gratification, that as soon as a woman's body changes, they feel personally wronged. Like, Georgia Smith doesn't even know you fucking exist. I thought I would finish off this video with an excerpt from The End of the BBL Era, A Return to 90s Thinness by Kate Rodriguez Garcia on the Michigan Daily. The BBL era was a short break from traditional beauty ideals that have been upheld for decades. However, it was just as harmful as the standards of the past because it still produced an unattainable standard for women to have a perfect shape through dangerous cosmetic procedures. Being bigger is no longer synonymous with wealth and prosperity. In the new age of the calorie, the BBL was bound to be temporary because one trend that highlights thickness and curviness cannot change decades of thinness culture. But yes, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to give it a like, leave a comment on your thoughts, and I will see you guys soon for another video. Bye!